Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Take advantage of this crisis that's coming. Mostly this week, it was about the debt ceiling being raised or not. And there's also an interesting thing about flesh-eating zombies. Not zombies, flesh-eating drugs that turn people's skin into zombies. Let's get started. Supposedly, they were working on an agreement to raise the debt ceiling, which, in all honesty, they'll probably just raise the debt ceiling eventually after just, the heckling back and forth. The U.S. is going to default, blah, blah, blah. But there was a situation where the Republicans want to stop spending. The Democrats want to keep spending. That's why they want to raise the debt ceiling. Whether you think one is right or the other, at the end of the day, they have to negotiate, because if they don't raise the debt ceiling, we're running right now a $2 trillion deficit, which basically means that we're taking in about 4.9 trillion and we're spending 6.9. So we're not able to raise the debt ceiling. We can't pay part of our bills. That's essentially what's going on. So supposedly the Republicans walked out of the negotiations. They said that the White House isn't being reasonable. So eventually it'll probably be a bunch of bickering back and forth until they come to an agreement. But it's going to be important that they come into agreement, because that could cause serious problems for the U.S. and its financial situation. Overall, for the week, the U.S. markets were mostly positive. Canada was negative. Overseas markets, the European was mostly higher, with the DAX being the biggest winner of all. Latin America, mostly higher. Argentina was the biggest winner there in the stock markets. The central bank in Argentina raised rates by 97%. So I think I said that incorrect. They raised them to 97%. So just imagine for a moment that every month you're going to buy eggs, right? This egg fiasco that happened a few months ago. I don't know what eggs cost in the US, because I haven't been there in a while, but whatever it is, $5 a dozen. And then next month it's double, so it's $10. Then the month after that, it's another doubling. So, $20. And it just keeps going 5, 10, 20, 40, 80. Can you imagine that? That's most likely what's going to happen to the U.S. eventually. The Africa and Middle Eastern markets mostly lower, with Egypt going down over 3%, and Asia and the Far East mostly mixed. Japan's Nikkei was the biggest winner there, in Taiwan, both of those over 4%. Bitcoin and crypto news, not a whole lot of news in the crypto space, not even a lot of movement either with Bitcoin. Bitcoin went down by 57.57%, just a touch under 27,000. And one of the interesting pieces of news is, if you remember a few weeks ago, I talked about how Zimbabwe, which is a country in Africa which had one of the worst situations with hyperinflation, they wanted to emit a digital currency, a token that was backed by gold. Well, the IMF, which are, part of the cabal, they said it's going to be dangerous for the financial system, guys. So what's funny is Zimbabwe just rebuked the IMF, and they sold $14 million of the gold-backed digital currency. So we'll see how that goes. In commodities, this is the part about the flesh-eating zombie drug. I don't know if this is an actual news in commodities. Well, drug's a commodity, right? But I need to put a section on the conspiracy theory, because this I find really interesting. I don't know if you remember, some of you guys that have been watching these videos for a while, I think this was about 7 months ago or 8 months ago, Amazon changed their terms and conditions to say that if there is a zombie apocalypse, they don't have to deliver your package, essentially, right? And I thought that was really weird. Like, why would they put that in the terms and conditions? Well, in Los Angeles, the wonderful garbage hole that is Los Angeles, people are taking a flesh-eating zombie drug called Trank. And there's people who have rotting skin that are just hunched over, spread across the city, and the city is saying that they can't ban it because essentially it's legal. I just thought this was really interesting, because now we're seeing 1 + 1 = 2. Apparently that's not racist anymore. Drought forces Spain's fifth largest hydropower plant to halt. The water levels were below 23%. And the droughts in the U.S. also are affecting the food production. If you didn't know, the United States is a powerhouse when it comes to food production. And now they bought Euro wheat from Europe, from Poland more than anything, because the drought has upended the crop markets here in the U.S. I thought that was really interesting. U.S. Energy Department is soliciting bids for 3 million barrels of crude to be able to refill the depleted strategic petroleum reserve. And U.S. crude, both international and the U.S., went up this week after May was the sixth month of losses. U.S. lumber prices have gone down by over 80%. If you guys don't remember, it hit a peak of in May 2021. It was $1,700 per 1,000 board feet. Now it's around $340. I actually did a deck during that time, and it literally costed about 3 times what it should, but it was still worth it. Home renovation repairs now are starting to slow down due to the situation with the pandemic. Due to the situation with the economy. And Home Depot even has reported that they missed on their revenue, and this is the biggest miss in 20 years. So even construction now is starting to show some red flags in the U.S. economy. Gold giant Newmont Corp closed on a $19.2 billion deal to buy rival Newcrest Mining Ltd. They are solidifying their position as one of the largest gold miner in the world. They have mines in the Americas, in Africa, in Australia, as well as Papua New Guinea. That's an island just north of Australia. Gold went down over 1%, 1.66% to 1978, while silver went down 0.45% to 23.93. This is mainly due to the fact that the dollar had quite a bit of a surge because of the expectations of the interest rates being increased, and that's why everything kind of went down. Financial and banking news. I want to get your opinion on this, so comment if you guys can. The automated machines at supermarkets now are begging people for tips. I went to Starbucks. They're even doing it here in Colombia. Don't ask me to give you a tip if it's not a restaurant, right? I'm old school. I grew up where, waiters make $2 an hour instead of the 10, 12, 13, whatever minimum wage is, and they make a lot more money because of the tips. Now, just because you put a, piece of clothes on the rack, or you go and you choose your own food, you put it in your own bag, you check it out yourself, and you pay the supermarket, they want you to give them a tip. And when I went to the U.S. recently at Starbucks, they hand you, they have like the automated thing, right? So they hand you the thing. It's like, oh, it's just gonna ask you a question, and they just look at you like, don't be an a-hole, leave us a tip. Maybe we should all write to Starbucks and say, hey, Starbucks, how about you pay your employees a living wage and not trying to take my money to give your employees more money? I mean, come on, guys. Anyway, that was my rant for the evening. Political news. President Erdogan of Turkey is looking at his elections to be able to extend his third decade rule in the country. Ecuador's President Guillermo, which is the first conservative president in 2 decades, has dissolved Congress on Wednesday and is facing his final phase of impeachment proceedings for embezzlement of money, which he denies, obviously. Economic news. China's economic recovery is losing momentum after the initial burst of consumer and business activity earlier this year starting to slow down quite a bit. A big problem with that, because remember that China is the second largest economy in the world, and the U.S. National Association of Realtors are reporting on Thursday that domestic home sales declined. They're down 23.2% in April on an annual basis, and the median price of all homes, which is at about $388,000, fell 1.7% from a year ago. Biggest annual drop since January 2012. Corporate news, as I mentioned to you guys, Home Depot went down quite a bit after they beat on earnings, but the same store sales growth went down by over 4%. Even the Q1 last year was at $38.3 billion, and they went down to $37.3 billion this year. That's obviously because nobody has any money to fix their homes anymore because the inflation rate is at 20-30%. Tesla rose over 4% after Elon Musk found the new CEO of Twitter. So he's refocusing on Tesla and new Tesla products. He talked about reiterating the rollout of the Cybertrucks. It seems like there's going to be a huge fight in the automotive space with the new electric trucks. And the EU, the European Union, on Monday approved Microsoft's acquiring of the gaming company Activision Blizzard for $69 billion. Microsoft gave them some concessions, which they probably won't comply with anyway, but they were able to do it. And Tencent, which is the Facebook of China, jumped over 11% in the stock market after they had their fastest growth in over a year. Their profit rose 10%, while their revenue went up by over 11%. Trade news, according to Turkish officials, Russia is going to continue to allow the export of the crops from Ukraine. If you remember, Russia blocked all of their ports, and then there was an agreement made that was spearheaded by Turkey and the UN. The reason why I report this is because we still have a food problem, essentially. I remember I just told you that the US is ordering wheat from Europe because of the strong sequía is the word in Spanish. The drought that we were having in the US. So, you know, any kind of blockage of any kind of food can definitely hurt us, especially with the inflation that we're having right now. And in technology, according to Goldman Sachs, artificial intelligence could lift off profit margins for a lot of companies. It could raise the profit margins by 400 basis points, they're saying, and it could increase productivity in the United States at businesses by 1.5% per year. So get ready to be out of a job because AI is going to take it for you. Investment news, after 3 years of pandemic travel restrictions and rocketing energy costs, the tourism is finally coming back in the southern countries of Europe, being Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. If you didn't know, Spain is the second most visited country in the world after France. The US is actually number 3. That's probably changed a little bit after the pandemic. But Spain, the tourism numbers were up over 41%, but they still haven't reached the same numbers as the same quarter in 2019. And interesting facts this week, an 11-year-old and 1100-year-old Bible, handwritten Hebrew Bible, was sold as one of the world's oldest surviving biblical manuscripts. It sold for $38 million in New York, one of the most expensive books ever bought. And a Portuguese dog named Bobby is now the new oldest dog ever. 84-year-old in human years, 31-year-olds in dog years. Set the records for oldest living dog and oldest dog ever. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, the preppers were right. Go Lakers.